at 7c, I can factor a GCF from a polynomial. GCF means greatest common factor. My first example, we're going to factor 3x cubed minus 12x squared plus 15x. We start by listing the prime factors of each term. So for 3x cubed, that's equal to 3 times x times x times x. For negative 12x squared, that's equal to negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 3 times x times x. For 15x, that's equal to 3 times 5 times x. Once we have the factors listed as prime factors, we identify the factors that all of them have in common. So as I look at my two lists, I see that there is a 3 in each one of these lists. I also see there is an x in each one of these lists. There are not any other numbers that are in each list. So what I'm actually doing is undoing the distributive property, and I write my answer with a parenthesis. The numbers that I underlined, the 3 and the x from each term, go outside the parentheses. Everything left over goes inside the parentheses. So I look at the first term, and I did not use this x right here or this x right here. X times x is x squared. I look at the second term. I did not use the negative 1 or the 2 or the 2 or this x right here. So negative 1 times 2 times 2 is negative 4 times x, negative 4x. I look at the third term. I did not use this 5, so that's a positive 5. I close the parentheses. I remember that the GCF is my 3x. That is what they all had in common, and that goes outside the parentheses. Everything else goes inside the parentheses. So let's look at the next example. We have 8x squared minus 12x. I list the 8x squared into its prime factors. Well, I know that 8 is actually 4 times 2 times x times x, but 4 is not prime, so I'm going to rewrite that to 2 times 2 times 2 times x times x. And I know that the negative 12 is a negative 6 times 2 times x, but negative 6 is not prime. Negative 6 is actually negative 2 times negative 3. So I'm going to rewrite that to a negative 2 times 3 times x, but negative 2 isn't prime either. So that's actually, oh, I need one more 2 in there. 2 times, there we go. I'm going to rewrite negative 2 to negative 1 times 2 times 3 times 2 times x. Now it's listed as its prime factors. I find what numbers they have in common. Well, I have a 2 here and a 2 here. I have a 2 here and a 2 here. And I have an x here and an x here. So my greatest common factor would be 2 times 2 times x, so that's 4x, and it goes outside the parenthesis. What do I have left over? In the first one, I have a 2 and an x, so that's 2x. And in the second one, I have a negative 1 and a 3. So negative 1 times 3 is negative 3 inside the parentheses. For my last example, 6m cubed. Well, I know that 6 is 2 times 3 times m times m times m. And I know the negative 12 factors because I just did them from above. So that would be negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 3 times m times m. And the negative 24. Okay, I know negative 24 is an 8 times negative 3. So we're going to do negative 3 times 8 times m. Negative 3 is not prime, so we're going to change that to negative 1 times 3. And I did 8 earlier, so 8 is actually 2 times 2 times 2. And I still have that m. Now I look for the things that they have in common, the greatest common factor. What do they all have? Well, I have a 2 here, a 2 here, and a 2 here. I also have a 3 here, a 3 here, and a 3 here. And then I see I have an M here, and an M here, and an M here. I do not have anything else in common to all three, so I have 2 times 3 is 6, and an M for the greatest common factor, putting it on the outside of the parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis, for the first term, I have m times m, m squared. For the second term, I have negative 1 times 2 times m, negative 2m. For the third term, I have negative 1 times 2 times 2, negative 4, close parentheses.